Welcome to the podcast. We are
Thank
so
you.
excited. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your last name
Okay,
correct.
it's an injury to the lip.
Yeah,
It's
Cutlip.
yeah,
Morgan Cutlip. It's Cutlip. Because it's like Morgan Cutlip. Okay, Dr.
Morgan Cutlip. Yeah.
Morgan Cutlip, PhD in psychology and
Mhm.
highly sought after relationship expert and knows what it feels like to lose yourself in motherhood, which is like such a huge conversation over here for us because um, well, you have so much amazing thing you've done. Teen Vogue, Good Morning America, Women's Health, like it goes on and on and on. And you have a new book available, Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself.
Oh, that is such a hard thing. This is you were speaking to all of our audience, including the two right here.
And
I know.
I want to also address, first of all, the topic, but the fact that you lose yourself multiple times in motherhood, not just once in motherhood. And I feel like that's not talked about. It's like we segment new moms. It's very normal for you to lose yourself and it's very accepted and everyone's really patient about it. And then you get into teenagehood and you see your kids beginning to launch and you see the next phase of your life coming and your relationship changes and you're like, holy shit, what's next for me? Because they're getting their own life and you've like lost yourself again because you're not sure what your next phase looks like because your phase has been your children.
Yeah, it's like it's like you're constantly like you lose yourself and then you find yourself, then you lose yourself again, and then
you lose your relationship, you find your relationship, and then you lose it again.
That's exactly it. That's how I actually begin my book, is like completely demystifying this idea that you can find yourself and then stay found, or you can like find the perfect balance in all of your relationships and they're never going to get screwed up, because the reality is that life is always messing up our relationships. It's pulling them apart. Like the normal stuff, the beautiful stuff, the painful stuff is always sort of shaking up our relationship with our kids, with our partner, with ourselves. And so I begin there because I think it's so important that we understand you're going to lose yourself. You're going to get burnt out. Your relationships are going to get completely screwed up because life just kind of gets in the way sometimes. And so that's not the problem. That's normal. And the more we sort of act like we can find balance, or we can always stay like completely whole and not lose ourselves in our relationships, the worse we feel when we get lost. The worse we feel when, it hits the fan and like everything's messed up because we're like, oh, I was doing all the stuff. Why am I so messed up now? And so I begin there because I want people to take that pressure off. You're going to get messed up. You're going to lose yourself. All these things are going to happen. The thing that we need to really get good at, though, is learning how to find ourselves again, learning how to come again to a place of connection in our relationships with others and ourselves. And so we have to take some responsibility for that.
What does like losing yourself look like for some people? Because I think sometimes, we talk to mostly moms, motherhood is so consuming. You're not even sure which way, like, is your relationship okay? Are your friendships okay? Like, how do you even know you're lost?
It's like you don't know where you are on the spectrum. You're like, do all moms feel like this, or is my situation worse?
Yeah. Am I really screwed here? Like, am I lost and I don't know it?
So I think being lost shows up in a lot of different ways. There's not like this is you being lost, but I think there's certain telltale signs. Like one might be that you don't really actually know what you need anymore. I think this is like a really important one, and one that's sort of a common thread, because part of how we lose ourselves in our relationships is that we make our needs so incredibly small. We backburner ourselves. We almost become like needless or martyrs, that we get to a point where we actually have a moment to ourselves and we're like, I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what I need. I don't even know what I want to do. And I think that is like a really good indication that like, ooh, I might need to recalibrate a little bit, because I'm so far gone that I'm not even in touch with who I am and what I need anymore.
And what makes me happy.
I have to ask you though, how many people go into motherhood even knowing that? Because I feel like you have to know yourself to know what you want. So how many people start their journey in motherhood without even knowing who they are and what their needs might possibly be. Because I feel like so many of us have been raised to think that motherhood and, marriage is what
It will give you that purpose.
is what the purpose is. And then you get there and you're like, wait, what do I want?
Yeah, you're bringing up such a powerful point. So I think as women in general, we struggle with this, period, mother or not a mother. And then when you become a mom, we just turn up the dials. So as women, we are really taught to believe that we have to self-sacrifice for the preservation of our relationships. We have to make everything small that we need so that everybody else can be cared for. Then we become a mom and we kind of have to do this. It's like we have to, in the beginning, especially, make our needs really, really small to take care of the baby, keep the baby alive, do all the things. But then there's all these societal pressures that like a good mom does this, this, and this. And so it's intensified this pressure to back burner ourselves for the sake of everybody and everything else. And we get stuck in it. So I do think a lot of us enter into motherhood and marriage this way. And then all of our relationships pull on pieces of us where it intensifies. And then we get deeper and deeper into it. And then we're like, it's like the moms, and you come out of motherhood and your kids are launched, and then you start to resent them for like having a life beyond you because you've literally given your entire self to them over all of these years. And so it becomes something that's so important for us to like tease apart and to understand so that we can change the trajectory of our motherhood journey.
That when divorce happens?
I know. No, but when I'm hearing that, like I'm thinking either if you're sitting there and you're like, I'm completely lost, or you're having a moment where you're like, I think I'm found right now, but I don't know what tomorrow brings. Is there like maintenance that you can do along the way so that the lost isn't so far gone?
Totally. So, okay, let me say one more thing about what you were saying before, because I feel like this could be really helpful, and then I'll tell what the maintenance is. So I think that something we don't realize when we go into motherhood is that since the moment we've been born, we are absorbing messages about what it means to be a good mom.
Yes.
Also, what it means to be a good wife, what it means to be a good sister, all the things. We're absorbing these messages, but specifically about motherhood. And they live inside of us, unbeknownst to us, until we become a mom. And then they come out in the form of crazy high expectations that we hold ourselves to. And so I like to encourage moms, if you're like, I don't know where I'm at, I don't know what's going on with me, I think I'm really lost, I don't know where to begin, start to unpack the question, the type of mom I thought I'd be is. As you unpack this question, you're going to identify all of the sort of messaging you've received over the years about what it means to be a good mom and why maybe you feel like crap or like you're never enough or you never do enough. It's going to be revealed as you understand and unearth these expectations.
Say that question one more time so I don't forget it. What kind of?
The type of mom I thought I'd be is.
And
it might be like, I thought I'd look put together. I thought I'd have endless patience. I thought I'd never need a break. I thought I'd be the fun mom. Like all of these things. Unearth them, put them on the table, because when you shine a light on them, it empowers you to do something about them. Then you can be like, that doesn't work for me anymore. This is ridiculous. Why am I doing this? And you can start to shift them. And that becomes so powerful for moms.
It's like you're like releasing these things that are hanging there.
Yes.
I think also so many of us don't even think what kind of mom we were going to be. We are the kind of mom we saw on social media, online, on Pinterest, right? So you have a comparison of what you were brought up in, where conversations were shown on TV of like moms who did, everything, moms who could work, make a 5-star dinner, be banging in the bedroom, and then also have all the friends, go on girls trips, plan vacations, make the perfect like 7-layer cake, and then plan the holidays and make it look flawless. Like I think we were raised that without a conversation around why that's unrealistic, right? Because now we hear of a lot of moms who are kind of stuck in taking care of their parents, their children, and then their entire children's lives of making it a memorable, beautiful, functional one. And then also finding ourselves and trying to stay healthy. And you're like, holy fuck, this is
it's too much.
And even though it's not realistic, you cannot help but watch that one person on Instagram
and on TV
that you're like, I honestly, I think she does like you get convinced, you think she does do all those things.
It's a second brain, right? It's the narratives you don't know you're seeing, that you're constantly like you're not actively thinking it, but it's actively running through your head. So the little voice is constantly being like, you didn't do that, you're not doing that, oh, do that, right? Like it's these weird things.
It's always operating in the background. So I think like our parenting experience is so much harder than previous generations, in particular because of this like information overload culture, social media, and all these things. But even like I tell a story. So my mom was adopted. She was adopted by a woman who was like on the exterior really awesome to the community and just like this wonderful gift. But at home, she was really, really cold and neglectful. And so my mom ended up sort of experiencing her childhood. She was given up at birth, then adopted by somebody who kind of didn't really want her. So her childhood was really lonely. And so she took all of her pain and made it my sister's and my gain. She like overdid it as a mom. Next level. She's like the woman you described. That was like my mom. And so I didn't really, I mean, I knew I had a great mom, but I didn't really think about it that much. I go into motherhood and she becomes my template. Like she becomes the mom, the ideal mom. And so I'm like, gosh, why is it that I'm doing all the things and I still feel like crap? I still feel like I'm not doing enough. And then you want to layer on social media and all the perfection and all the filters and all the things. But part of it was me realizing, okay, her life is way different than my life. We're parenting with way different life circumstances and in a way different era of parenting. We're like cycle breaking and doing all these things that add so much more pressure to how we show up as parents. And so part of it was like, okay, you know, my dad was home every night. My husband's gone every week. Like that right there is a big difference. I work. My mom never worked. It's a big difference. And so I had to decide like her template doesn't fit for me.
Her template doesn't fit, right?
Doesn't fit.
And the neighbor's template doesn't fit for me, or whatever it is.
Or that chick on social media, her template doesn't fit for you either. And also, it's so easy to show up looking glamorous on social media and having it all together. There is a endless supply of people who look prettier, richer, more put together, better behaved kids, sexier, better houses. Like it's never ending. And so we have to be careful about how we consume that too.
You know, we have a series of questions to ask you, but I just think that when Nat said like the maintenance, so you don't like, if I'm a new mom going into this and I'm like, okay, I've heard this thing about losing yourself and I've heard this thing about like, you know, is there a way to identify like, okay, I know I'm a whole person going into this, and then I can continue to check, like, is there a check-in? Like, what can we do if we have been moms for 15 years and have never done a check-in? Like, is it too late to not do a check-in? And if you're like, oh my God, I got to go move to an island, like I'm fucked. Is there a way that we don't have to give everything up to go find ourselves? Because that's really scary too, is actually thinking about that we're lost and we have to do some work.
It is scary, and I think it's overwhelming, and that's one of the biggest sort of hurdles when talking to moms is like convincing them that this will actually move the needle. I think a lot of times we're like, like what's the whatever, self-care, schmelf-care, like who cares? It's not going to do anything. So I believe that the way that we come back to finding ourselves is through these self check-ins, is through acknowledging that we have a relationship with ourselves. We are so good at taking care of our relationships with our kids, with our family, with our partner, but we sort of dismiss the idea that we actually are in relationship with ourselves. And so we have to, in the book, I say we have to mother ourselves like we mother our kids. We already know how to do the things. We just need to do them for us. So we help our kids figure out, you know, we help them like, this is what you're feeling. And we help them understand their emotions and express their emotions. Why aren't we doing the same for us? We help them articulate what they need and get good about speaking up and asserting themselves and setting boundaries. We need to do the same for us. We help them see themselves in a positive light. We need to do the same for us. We're so hard on ourselves. That is such an important area of intervention. So in my book, I actually provide a framework. I'm not prescriptive. I'm not like, do this, this, and this, because what works for you might not work for me. But I give moms a framework for the self check-in, which is built around actually a picture or a model of relationships. And it's like, this is the relationship you're managing. This is what it looks like. This is what it's made up of. And 30 seconds a day, when you go to the bathroom, you take your shower, whatever, start to go through this model, check in on yourself, and start to build back that connection little by little. When you do that, you can assess where it is you're sort of like feeling like you have some deficits, and you can do one of two things. You can either attend to it and you can take care of it. Where you're like, this is a deficit, I got to do the thing. Or maybe you don't have the time, the energy, or the resources or the support to do the thing, but at least you've defined what it is that you need. And I think that's really powerful for moms. And you can just put a pin in it for later. Because I think a lot of times we're existing with like, we're struggling, but we don't know why, and we don't know what we need. And so when you define it, that becomes empowering.
How do you know though?
Also, what would be a definition of a deficit?
You're like, what would you know? Because I feel like so many of us are like, well, before you answer that question,
yes.
Do men think like this? Like, how come men, like, are we overthinkers? Or
like, we're going to need another podcast for that.
I know that's another.
Are men thinking about, like, they're, like, have they parked themselves for fatherhood? Or is this really a woman issue right now?
I mean, I'll get like a rogue man on my Instagram being like, why aren't you speaking to men? And they're upset at me, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, there are the men that have parked themselves for fatherhood. I'm not going to say that doesn't exist, but men have not grown up in the same society with the same. Well, we've grown up in the same society, but they've not received the same messaging about what it means to exist in relationships. Men receive the messaging that, like, you know, that could be another episode, but like, my worth is about what I earn, or my identity is tied up in what I do and not who I am. So they have their own set of stuff.
So but ours lost themselves, but not
maybe in their work.
Motherhood.
Right. I think it looks very different because we're taught we need to like a good mom does self-sacrifice for everybody else. Yes. And so that I think is what is sort of driving us to do this, because to go against it is like swimming upstream. Like, gosh, this feels impossible.
Like even stupid things like, you know, personally, I don't know why I'm so obsessed with dinner. Like, I don't know why a cooking a meal is such like a roadblock for me, that it is something I stress about in terms of like, my meals do not look like hers. And, you know, she can go in the kitchen and make a 5-minute meal and then like make it like a platter. And I'm like, mine's like, but they're fed. And because I think the pressure you hear from society, sitting as a family with a big meal. So in your head, you see social media where there's like the tablescape and everyone's sitting around having a nice conversation, right? You're not seeing the people who are like eating in the back of the car while they're driving to sports. And you can still have a meaningful conversation in the car, but we have to redefine those conversations without layering on what the expectations are, because there is a lot of expectations on women and on moms. And I don't know how many dads are like, I have to get home for dinner. I have to sit there and have those important conversations around the family meal.
And I just have to say, one of those things is that you like I think, you know, what you're saying, what kind of a mom do I want to be, is also knowing knowing what is actually important to you as a mom. And like we said, it's not the same as, you know, so some people might be like, I have to sit down and have dinner with my family because that matters to me.
Yeah.
And then for you to know, if that doesn't necessarily matter to me,
they're not going to jail.
Stress about that thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Part of it. So when I walk moms through the self check-in, the first step is know deeply. And so I give prompts. I make it very practical. I know it sounds kind of like out here right now, but I make it very practical and give questions to reflect on for your self check-in. But the idea is that when you know yourself really deeply, you can meet your needs and take care of yourself in the ways that matter. Just like think about how you know your kids. Like, oh my gosh, we know as soon as like there is a change in preference of a certain food or way that's prepared, like we know them so well, which is how we intuit their needs. This is where I think maybe sometimes when dads are like, oh, tell me what to do, I don't know what to do. It's like partially because like they're not in the know as much as we are with the kids. So literally, we know
my husband will make grilled cheese and like, he doesn't do it. I mean, he puts too much cheese on it. And I know that without asking.
You know.
But it's this, but I know, and I what you're saying is so important, that we also don't let dads take the lead in that. Like we often, from the beginning, overstep and do too much for them without letting them do it. And then they're like, this is great. Take it away. You know?
That's like out of their minds forever. Yeah. That's a whole conversation around that one.
That is.
But like my point though is that when we know our kids deeply, we can take care of their needs, we intuit them, all these things, but we don't really always know ourselves deeply. And so I think that we move, especially as women and moms, we move through life with such a fast-paced momentum that we are like disassociated from ourselves. So somebody's like, "Hey, how are you?" You're like, "I'm good." And they're like, "No, really, how are you?" And we're like, "Huh, I don't even know. I don't even know how I am," because we just are not connected. And so part of it is, like you were saying, knowing ourselves well enough to know what do we value, what's important to us, where can we be like, that doesn't matter, but this really does to me. And so then we can start to make these shifts that actually make a difference in like our expectations and things like that. And then that helps us eventually get to a place where we ditch the guilt.
How many women, like you're saying, deeply intuitively know, do that for their relationships with their partners, their families, like their extended families, their in-laws, and then their children? Like, is there a stat on that? Like how much women are intuitively like doing the life of the family unit, extended and micro?
I don't know the stat, but I do know that when they've looked at and research who takes on the role as relationship manager. So that's what you're saying. Like you're managing your spouse for like, hey, we really need a date. We really need to do the thing. Or like, it's women. We're the ones doing it. I mean, so I know there's been research on it. I don't know the statistic off the top of my head, but it found it repeatedly. And I think we just like, we all experience that. Like I'll be like, "Hey, did you call your mom? It's her birthday." Like, why are we doing this? Right? But we do.
Why?
We
Because
do.
we just want to take care of everybody. But
We
why?
want to take care of everybody. We want,
Because we're such good people.
we are. We're in like our palace of goodness. That's
And then we are like, I hate everybody. So you're like, you everybody, you like break if you don't check in. You really do. We hear we're sort of in the next phase of parenting where, and I think that the conversation of feeding into your book is like check in with yourself, where your kids get older and you've realized you've silenced yourself for so long and you've accommodated and you've intuitively taken care of everyone. And we hear of women kind of waking up and being like, kind of done. Like, I can't repair where I was. And they kind of go the extreme. And maybe they didn't make their needs to themselves or others around them loud enough. So you have a breaking point that I think that is silently breaking. And then, we're in the era of where women are like, I'm gonna break up with these people and go do my own life. Like I'm gonna start fresh. I love my children, but it's easier to step away from what I know and
like leave their partner?
Yeah, like divorce.
Yeah,
and, like,
it's happening.
Like, because I think we've swallowed for so long. That's a really bad analogy, Kat. But like, I feel like we've really silenced ourselves. And I think part of that's on us too, is like to voice what we need and look at what we need, is what you're saying, is like, we've got to be progressively checking in with our own needs, or you kind of are like, I can't do this anymore and I can't talk anymore and I'm done.
Yeah, I think I saw something called like walkaway wives, which is becoming more and more common, which is kind of like that thing where it's like we're like silently suffering and pissed off inside, and then we're just like, we're out, we're done, like, sorry. But I think the reality is though, which like I don't know if anyone's talking about this piece of it, is like, if you don't make those changes, you can walk away from your life, but you're just going to live it out with somebody else for the most part. And so like I think the irony of how we exist in our relationships is that we self-sacrifice, we shove it down, we, all the things, because we want to have the best relationships possible and we want to care for the people we love the best. But what happens is like we get grumpy and bitter and we don't want to have sex with our partners anymore and we're resentful and all of these. So we end up sabotaging our relationships because we're trying to take care of our relationships. And so it ends up backfiring in these really major ways. And so we have to, like I said, it is like swimming upstream, but we have to learn how to do this part of our relationships differently if we're going to come out whole and have the best relationships possible.
What I'm really like, what I'm really hearing a lot is when you say like you have to know yourself deeply, because if you don't know yourself and like the things that you need and want, you'll never be able to like go and find them or ask
Or articulate.
or ask for them. But it even reminds me like when we're parenting and we think about our children getting to know their individual selves. We want that so much. I think like so many people, even if they have lost themselves or if they have never really known what deeply matters to them and what makes them happy, is there like, I know when we said like we should say what's important to us and we should find out what our deficits are, how else do we get to like deeply know our own self?
The Bahamas, on a beach. I love that. She's saying everyone go to Tahiti.
Yeah, is that what she's saying?
Yeah.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
hosting a retreat if you want to join me.
Are you really?
No.
Oh
No, but maybe I should.
I know.
Let's go.
How do we
Let's
find
do
what are
it.
some other little things that we can do to find out what really makes us individually tick?
Yeah. So the way the book is structured is that, well, I try to make it really easy to read. So a lot of the stuff I tell stories to explain the points, because mom's like, if mom's going to read a book, self-help book, like it's got to be entertaining a little bit.
Yeah.
So I try to make that easy to read, but so I go really deep. So in each of the 5 areas, there's 5 steps to a self check-in. In each of the 5 areas, I go deep and then I come out and be like, okay, this is what you do in the moment. Here are your options. So in Know Deeply, I talk about what shapes us. Like our family background really shapes us. Do we understand how we, like, for example, the way we were loved impacts the way that, and shown love impacts the way that we exist in our relationships today, what we expect, how we show love, how we receive it. So I go into some of these things. And I also talk about 3 areas in that chapter, which is what brings us meaning, what is important to us. And then the last is it congruent? Because when we are acting in a way like in our life that is incongruent with what is important to us and brings us meaning, like what we value and things like that, that's when we don't feel like ourselves. If we value and it's meaningful to us to be the fun mom, but we are grumpy and yelling all the time, we are not going to feel like our true self. So I go deep and like picking these concepts apart and help moms really get into defining some of these things so they can start to come into like a good understanding of who they are. And I have plenty of exercises, and I don't make the exercises hard. I like, let me populate this for you, and then you tease apart what fits for you, because I know the last thing we want is like more stuff to do.
Yeah.
Try to like spoon feed it as much as possible, but also be able to get to some of that deeper stuff.
Yeah.
I there's so much here for this conversation, and I want to ask one question specifically for the common parent that we can put over there and just cut the clip. But teenagehood and being a mom, and that like you kind of have to, when you're taking care of younger kids, it's a job.
Yes.
But then you have to shift to become your whole person, because you have to be a person and you're watching them become a person, right? So like you become 2 people in a relationship. Like how important is it for us to know who we are when we're parenting teens? Because you no longer have to like get their clothes out. You no longer have to make sure they're fed. Like you have to feed them, but you don't have, the relationship changes. And how often are we going through this holy shit moment of who we are when they're teenagers? And is there a way to ground ourselves when we're feeling like we don't have that connection with them anymore? Because everything you have done when they were younger, they love you, they kiss you, they feed your soul. And then they become teenagers and you're like, I am a terrible mom because they don't even want to be with me. So is there a way that we can reckon and find ourselves when we feel like our whole job as a mom is like, I think I've never heard so many moms feel so disrespected and like they're doing a terrible job than when you have a teenager.
Oh, so my daughter is 10, and so I'm not there yet, but I'm getting like I'm getting whispers of this. So I really understand what you're saying. So I feel like there's 2 parts to your question. So how important is it to know yourself as you're parenting teens? Which is like, I feel like it's very maybe more important because I something I've noticed with our daughter is that like there's something I did the other day that was exactly what my mom would do, and I hated it, and I did it to my daughter, and I was like, hold the phone. Like, I need to walk this back. So I think part of why we need to know ourselves really well is because that if we don't unearth some of these things and have good insight, we just like repeat the crap that we experienced. And we do it with our own kids. And we're not actually like, I don't want to stress parents out with my answer, but it is important because we just repeat what we don't repair, and we see it come out in our kids. And a lot of times this will push them away. So I did the thing. Oh, it's so annoying. It's so annoying. My mom did it to me the other day, actually. I'm 41. I'm like, how are you doing this to me still? It still affects me. But when like a mom asks a question, but it's not really a question, it's like an accusation, or I don't know, my daughter forgot her spelling list, but her friend didn't. And I was like, Abby remembered her spelling list. You didn't see the spelling list? And I was like, oh, I did the thing. And she went into this sort of shame space. And because I know myself, I was able to recognize this. I was able to then come back to her and say, you know what? I did something that my mom used to do to me. Let me give you an example. I don't want to do this anymore. Let's talk about how we can navigate this differently. And worked on really coming to a place of connection, aligning on the issue, aligning on like being irritated with what I did. And this helped to repair our relationship and hopefully bring us closer and stop doing it in the future.
I love that you said that, because the clue is when you feel gross about what you said, like when you feel gross about the interaction, if you know yourself, you know you got to dig deeper and then be like, why did that feel bad? And then you can look and hopefully reflect, like, but you're so right. It's a clue. You knew right away because you know yourself. So for those of you who are like, I don't know myself that well, when you say something and it feels like ick, if you get the icks from that, it usually means you didn't really want that interaction to go that way. And I think that's the big difference we're saying about teenagers is you begin to see the shame, like you begin to see the feelings and the pushback of what you've done to them versus kind of like them rolling on and just hugging you, and like ice cream doesn't fix it anymore, like there's not like good snuggles at nighttime. When you're in a rift, they don't live here anymore, and you're like, come back, but you can't. It's got to be a healthy relationship.
And I think that example that you just gave of, whether it's flat out apologizing or going back to your child and saying like, I didn't like the way that worked. That is such an important thing that we have learned from a lot of parenting experts. But as a relationship expert, you just said, you just said the same thing, is just because we're adults and we're the parents, it doesn't mean we can't go back and try and redo it with them. And like you said, hopefully that would make us closer. Absolutely. When you can share
and teach them that it's okay to say sorry.
They're like, right. They're such a mirror, I feel like, as they get into teenage years of like all of the things we're like, ugh, I shouldn't be doing that. I need to repair this. And so it's our job to kind of step up. I'll say one more thing in teenage years. I talk about in my book, self-check-ins with ourselves, but the model that I give in the book applies to every single relationship. Right. And so get good at using that to check in with your teenager. How am I knowing you, and am I in touch with what's going on in your world? Am I seeing you in a positive light, or am I like casting you in this negative way, focusing in on your deficits and then treating you like treating you and leaning into all the ways you're falling short? And there you are again, being lazy and not doing your work or coming home late. Like, I can't trust, how are we communicating based on how we see them? How are we understanding what they need and meeting those needs and allowing space for those? How are we prioritizing our relationship with them? And then how are we like engaging in them and, as a person showing up in meaningful ways? And so it can be a great way to think about where your connection's at.
And teaching them how to check in with themselves, so they're not adults wondering who the hell they are. You're teaching them to constantly, like, you can break the cycle by getting your book and checking in like with them, teaching them, if you check in with them, then they'll begin to learn how to check in with themselves. Because you can, when they're in kindergarten and they put the little smiley happy faces up, like what are like the different feelings?
How are you?
What are you? Yeah. Then we stop. At some point they stop talking about how you feel, and it's just like, you're supposed to know from kindergarten how you feel, like circle what you're feeling, and then it's done. It's like we don't continue on that. So you're so right.
Yeah, I'm in this phase with our daughter's Effie, and it's like, I'll be like, you seem upset. I'm noticing it. What's going on? I don't know. I don't know. So like, we're in that phase of like, okay, we got to help you develop some insight and ability to self-reflect. And so I think the model provides a nice framework for just kind of organizing the stuff and thinking about, okay, well, where can I fit in to try to make a difference in my relationship with my kids, no matter their age?
Wow. I mean,
Where can we get the book? Tell us again what the book is called.
wait, can you give me one check-in question that would be from the book? Like one example, like what is one self check-in question I could ask myself or my teen today?
I feel like I gotta open my book
Yeah,
so
do it.
bad. Or I'm like,
No,
I've got
it's
all
not.
sorts of interventions, but like my questions. I think
I'm
one of
sorry.
them is am I seeing myself in a positive light? And that one
I
becomes
love
really
that.
important because the way that we see ourselves affects the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we judge ourselves or criticize ourselves. This in turn affects our ability to self-regulate because it drains our energy. When we are negative toward ourselves, critical of ourselves, it drains our energy, and we're more likely to lose it, be grumpy or irritated later on. And so thinking about how we see ourselves and what we're focusing on can make a really, really big difference. And that's an in the moment adjustment for moms that you can do right alongside your kids is shift
Yes.
what you're focusing on. Because usually we're focusing on all the ways that we suck versus the ways that we really do enhance our kids' lives.
I can't wait to wake up tomorrow morning and ask them all, what do you see? How do you see yourself today? And what positive light do you see yourself? Even saying that, I think they'll eye roll you. But
They
I do
will.
think I think it puts it into their head, or you can even feed it to them and like, I see you in this positive light today. Thank you for, and then, kind of reminding them, thank you for this conversation. I know it went rogue and we kind of went all over the place, but
I don't mind.
We just get so hungry for the information we can't even stay on track.
yeah. And I think such an important conversation to have because most people don't know who the hell they are and which way is up and they're feeling lost on the daily.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you for having me. The book's called Love Your Kids Without Losing Yourself. You can get it anywhere you buy books. So
And it's
Thank
out
you.
now, right?
It's out. Yeah, it's out there. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I adore you guys.
Oh my God, we adore you. Thank you so much. Bye.